Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Supermarketers Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Furukawa, and as always, we help marketers level up with AI. And today we have Tamara Ceman, a B2B SaaS marketer, the Practical Marketer, fantastic branding. Really excited to chat with you about how you're using AI. Tamara, thanks for joining.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is very exciting. I think that there's a lot of chatter about AI, but not necessarily grounded chatter. So I'm looking forward to having some friendly discussions about how I use it and how you use it. And let's see
Yeah,
what we
for
can get out
sure.
of this.
First of all, I love the positioning of practical marketer. There have been a lot of studies of companies that aren't seeing an ROI on the implementation of AI. And at this
Oh,
point,
yes.
2026, it's almost like at the inflection point of those pilot programs or those who are implementing and actually seeing returns on it. And I especially think with Claude Code, Claude Cowork, Claude AI as a way to take marketers from, extending their resources and capabilities. Yeah, let's get tactical and practical and talk about how you're using this. So a couple of the tools that you mentioned are Claude, Granola to record. I think that's a fantastic use case. And then you actually like build in Lovable. So maybe just to start, a quick background on how
Yes.
you are working with B2B SaaS companies and then how these tools and workflows fit in.
Absolutely. For a little bit of context, I've been in marketing for around 18 years now. And most of my career I've spent in-house. And for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, I've in three roles that were either director of marketing or head of marketing. My two last positions were director of PLG marketing for a fantastic company called Markup, which is a part of Eros. And then previous to that, with another fantastic company called Uscreen. I was the head of marketing there, and I've led a lot of teams. And my expertise kind of stems throughout the life cycle of a customer. So before they become a customer, what happens when they become a customer, all of the juicy parts about activation and feature usage, customer life cycle, engagement, etc., up until the point that they churn and long beyond that as well. So my work has always naturally covered this entire user journey. And that I've, for the last 2 years, I've been independent and I've worked with companies. And I don't like to use the word consultants because it gives founders the heebie-jeebies. I do not blame them. There's a lot of people with really bad experiences. But what I specialize in is helping companies get unstuck. So companies either come to me to understand why aren't they getting the market traction that they have expected to that point, or why are they stuck in a growth plateau. So right now I'm serving as an interim head of marketing for another fantastic company called Plexer. I know that I'm saying every company is fantastic that I work at, but I vet them really well and they're all amazing. So I'm serving as an interim head of marketing. So I'm even now always thinking about how can we best use AI to stretch our resources and to really add value versus just the noise, which has unfortunately been the theme over the last couple of years.
Amazing. Do you think we can actually get some
Yes,
tactical use cases? How are you
absolutely.
doing this? Because that is, I mean, if you pitch, I'm going to help you get unstuck or get past this plateau. I mean, sounds like it's always going to be a positive ROI, but I'd love to learn like the methodology and your analysis and how you do that.
Yes, absolutely. And the truth is, I never promise the positive ROI because sometimes at the end of the whatever the engagement is, and usually it's boxed into a certain time frame and certain goals. And sometimes I do tell to founders that they should potentially pivot or not invest further in a certain direction. So they know at the beginning, on the offset, I have this conversation that I will be brutally honest about what I'm seeing in the market. So, what I always do, even as the interim head of marketing, which is my biggest offer, most time consuming role that I can potentially possibly do with a client, I always start with the jobs to be done exercise. So I've developed my own methodology, a twisted version of the original methodology that kind of fits my view of the market. We start by doing the classic founder, co-founder, C-level people are going to sit down and help me draw some conclusions. Then we bring in the team, we set up the hypothesis, we look at the data. I look through ridiculous amount of data, which is actually a use case for AI. And then once I make the first assumptions and first hypothesis, we then start doing either soft experiments, which is just updates based on the benchmark that we currently have, right? The benchmark is the status quo, and then updates to the website, updates to the copy, and then just watching what happens over time with traffic, etc. Or we actually do large experiments that are structured as scientific experiments where we set up the hypothesis, who's involved, time frame, the criteria for success, criteria for failure, all of these beautiful things. Now, because I've been doing this before AI was kind of a thing, were tools that a lot of marketers have been using to help them do certain things faster. So before OpenAI made a mess of our world, ChatGPT, a lot of us have already been using Jasper for ads or Copy AI, right? So we have already had some fingers in it as well. But then, thanks to the massive investment and massive exploration of what AI can do, now it allows us to really stop being limited by a lot of the technical difficulties as marketers, like lack of access to the product people, lack of access to data analysis. And I say this with a pinch of salt because I'm going to share some caveats later. But having AI tools that can plug into certain areas of your process where you lack time, lack skills, or simply lack interest of doing like the boring stuff, you can now replace a lot of that with AI, with the caveat that you have to second guess everything that it gives to you, especially when it comes to drawing conclusions and data. Those are the things that are, I think, unfortunately, even though one would think, oh, yeah, machines, math, it matches, it does not. So always be skeptical.
Yeah. Now, yeah, I'd love to see like, if you have like
Yes.
a sample data set or because I totally agree. I think like I've found so much value in uploading CSVs, but
Mhm.
that's just a part of it, right? You want to provide as much context as possible, but then that's where actually
Mhm.
the unique domain expertise, like for some of the CEOs, co-founders, people you have in the room to understand the nuances of their customers, the customer journey, maybe where they have
Yes.
hypotheses on where there's a leaky bucket or they're losing people in the sign up process.
Hmm.
But yeah, if you are knee deep in this, can you walk us through how you're doing
I
this?
Absolutely. So just a little detour to position this. There is huge advantage of having everything built out in this massive workflow, and I think that's how a lot of the AI experts are presenting AI right now. And I think there is huge value in it. So if I was an in-house marketer, I would love to have complex workflow that works on multiple levels at the same time. I'm just waiting for baked bread at the end of the process. But the reality is, if you're working as either independent person like I am, as a consultant or even a coach or anything like that, you're limited by a couple of things. The first is access to data. The second is the proprietary nature of the data that you're accessing because the company's policies, every company has different policies around AI, and you just want to make sure that it's protected, right? You're not uploading anything that they're not feeling comfortable with. So the approach that I have to using AI is actually pretty granular. It's granulated. I don't have one massive workflow that I can constantly reproduce other than a few places where it does definitely speed me up. But what I do is, and I can show you this part, what I love using AI for is synthesizing conversations which are the bread and butter of marketing, especially when you're talking to interviewing customers and getting their feedback, and then you need to organize it, and then you need to synthesize it. And there is a really neat process. It's a three-step process, and it requires a note taker. I use Granola. You can use Gemini. Gemini is decent with
Fathom.
this as
Yep.
well. Yeah. Exactly. There are very decent note takers, and then I use Miro. Miro has its own sidekicks. Not sure how I feel about them yet. I know that they're investing time into improving them, but they do some of the job. And I use Claude, and Claude is helping me puncture holes in the conversation. So I'm going to share my screen and we can actually walk through it. And then I can show a little bit about how I use Lovable to unlock certain I hate that word unlock, but how I use
You are a
Lovable.
person. I will. Yeah. You're not an AI.
So how I use Lovable to bypass some of the difficulties that we as marketers, especially the independent kind of marketers, face in our day-to-day work.
Amazing.
So let me share my screen and we can jump in. Up, up. Oh, this is classical. Can you see my screen? I'm going to share my entire or no window. Entire screen so you can see my granola as well.
Granola, I'm not sure the pricing. I use Fathom. It integrates with Google Meet and Zoom, totally
Mm-hmm.
free, full transcripts. And I was using TLDV before, but they have a limited free plan. And actually, it was very annoying to get it out of the all the meetings. So I am a big fan of Fathom. They say they'll do a free plan forever.
Oh, really? I love that. I actually
Yeah.
use paid plan of most of the tools that actually all of the tools that I'm going to show you today. I use paid option, and unfortunately I can't. Oh, here we go. I figured it out.
The one
Thank.
benefit of Granola is that it sits in the background. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
speaking with someone, you don't have, it's not like there's a bot or note taker in the
Yeah.
call. It just kind of like records the audio and transcribes.
It does. It does. What I always make sure I do, and this is just being European, I
Yeah.
always make sure to check with the person. Are they aware that I'm using a note taker? I think that's just good due diligence. You don't want to sneakily record anybody. But for example, when I'm doing research, I'm doing customer interviews are going to be recorded in with Gemini. I feel that Granola gives me a better punch, or it gives me much more accurate overviews, where Gemini has its own advantages where the conversation is going to be hyperlinked to a specific moment within the video if you're recording video as well. Unfortunately, Granola doesn't do that because it's not capturing the video, but because it's so lightweight, it done amazingly well with capturing the right data and then synthesizing it for you, right? So this is what the notes are going to be, and you can actually ask the conversation to, for example, ask, are the three things I should focus on?
Right. So right now we're
And
just kind of
you,
looking at a side panel. This is Granola. The
yes,
takeaways, high
this
level
one.
summary of a transcript. I was confused for a minute because I saw my name at the top, but that's
Oh,
just
sorry.
a note. That's Granola recording, but we're looking at a previous transcript of Granola. So we're getting the
Yes,
three
exactly.
takeaways.
This
It's
is
scanning. Yeah.
yeah, it's sitting in the background. This is a past conversation that I had just today with a peer of mine. So we talked about customer interview methodology.
Oh wait, sorry. I think you're on mute.
How that happened. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
My
I can
entire
hear you
screen is
now.
red.
Yeah, it was there were a few issues, but yeah, I can hear you and I can see the screen.
Okay.
So it's a Monday call
Okay.
priorities, hiring marketer. So we get the three takeaways, and I'm seeing the Miro board
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
some of the issues. Looks like prioritized task list.
Exactly. So what I, for example, do is once I finalize a call that then I need to summarize and organize. In this case, it is just a friendly call, but you can imagine this being a customer interview. I don't find Granola or any of the note-taking tools actually too accurate with giving you the summary. So that's why I asked it what should be the main thing that I do, and it's not really hitting the point correctly. So what I instead do is I use Miro already. And as I said, I'm on a paid plan with all of these tools. So I get to play with some of the Miro AI as well. So what I already did just to speed up the process and not bother you through my very wonky copy paste methods, I already copy and pasted that exact conversation that you saw in the Granola here. And then what I did is you just select it, and then you have the Miro AI, and you can ask it to turn it into a document, which is just basically moving it into a doc. You can then ask it to reorganize it for you. But what I really enjoy doing is asking it to do something else with it, right? And sometimes I'm going to do 5 or 6 different ways to visualize insight in order to view it in a different way. So sometimes it's going to be sticky notes that help me prioritize. And sometimes it's going to be a table that's then going to be expanded with additional insights and notes, etc., especially if I need to get somebody else's feedback. So what I'm doing here is actually ridiculously a simple way to synthesize the call recording. It's now in Miro. I have prioritized the notes based on just the prompt that I have added into the sidekick from Miro. So if you're on higher plans, you can actually create your own sidekicks, which is definitely something on my to-do list to give it a go. But one sidekick is enough for me right now. And I do use this system a lot. And unfortunately, I can't show what my Miros that I use with my clients are huge, and they have such an incredible amount of data that kind of sits in them, whether it's customer interviews and then synthesize the jobs to be done, etc. And these little hacks of just using the AI that's already in the tool to speed up the process, remove organizing them manually, can save you hours, if not more, depending on how big the project is. So it
Totally.
really is that good.
And I see that it's color coded by urgency or severity, so critical, high,
Yes.
medium. Is that something that you added as context to the sidekick, or is that something that?
No.
Okay,
What I
so
did here is here are actual prompts. Turn into sticky notes, cluster and rank importance. This is the entire prompt.
got it. Okay,
And
amazing.
everything else everything else is sidekick. And I purposefully use this very skinny prompt to show how much is possible to get out of this to this with this one sentence, this one line.
Yeah. Now, from this, I mean, this is a hypothetical, but like if you were doing a jobs to be done, for example, then that feeds into product, that feeds into marketing.
Yes.
You might have it prioritized based on critical urgency. Those become tasks or to-dos for, say, the marketing team, or it might inform maybe more research to be done or where there are opportunities for
Yes.
content or assets. Okay, amazing.
Typically, there's a handover process, I call it, between what AI can do for us and then what we as humans need to take over further for judgment. So for example, if I synthesize the conversation and then move on to organizing the conversations into stickies, the next step is going to be to validate if this organization first, obviously I would take a look at it and decide if it's accurate or how accurate is it. But ultimately, the next part would be a conversations to sanity check the hypothesis, highlight anything that needs further research or further refinement, and then obviously deciding what actual critical things need to be adjusted or researched further, because now it's highlighting 6 things. And there's no way for us to focus on 6 things, right?
Right.
So
So how does that handover happen from here to, I think you mentioned Claude and then Lovable. Those would be the next steps.
yes. So the reason why I said that my usage of these tools is a little bit granulated is because these tools are right now disconnected. So you can connect them through different ways. So some of them through Claude Code, some of them through some other kind of connectors that are popping up. I haven't found a process that works for me that doesn't unfortunately expose me to variety of risks. As a consultant, right? I don't have just one set of rules to follow. It's not like the world is my playground and I can use the AI tools however I want. I do have to think about the fact that I do have proprietary information in my system at all times. So that's why, for example, I cannot, calm conscience, just install Claude Cowork, even though I would love to, but I can't right now because the compliance issue is a real issue, especially when you're working with B2B companies that have to have very high compliance standards. And that's where the process with AI breaks down a little bit. So you either get approvals from all of these companies that you're working with or have worked with before, etc., and make sure that they understand the risk and the benefits, or you just remain granulated for at least a period of time until you can close the bubble around specific things you want AI to do within your system. So that means that whatever I want to do with this now would have to be manually taken over into the next step.
Got it. Yeah. So the next step would be, say, Claude, maybe you're highlighting stuff, exporting as a PNG or PDF screenshot. Then you go to Claude. Now you're kind of like taking that data. So the process at a high level was a free form conversation with, let's say, a co-founder or somebody where you're gathering information about the company, then you're visualizing it, prioritizing it, organizing it. Then you go to Claude. Yep. And then, yeah, I'd love to learn also how Lovable fits into this.
Yes, absolutely. So very quick view just of Claude is that there are a couple of things that people don't necessarily think about. But when you're creating projects, so I created an example project just for us. There is an option to enable memory, which please do.
Yep.
AI output is so much better with memory, and a lot of casual users don't necessarily know that this is true. You can pre-prompt it. You can add variety of instructions, how you want it to behave, what things you want it to consider versus others. If there are any caveats for this specific project, you want to instruct it to be as succinct as possible. And then you can upload plethora of tools to give it context. So for example, if I was working with a client, I already had Granola interview. I moved it to Miro. Now Miro has the context, has the stickies. Out of these stickies, the next step would be some of the conversations, and then I would very likely export some of the information as PDF. Let me just close Miro because it might be dragging my internet down a bit. And then upload it. You can upload the custom company information. You can upload shots because Claude is amazing at reading text from images as well. You can upload PDFs, Miro documents. You can export them as PDFs or even just copy paste them. And the beautiful thing about this is that then once it has some of the context of what you do or what the customer does, what are you focusing on, every single conversations that you have is already going to have a pre-baked context. And that's very important, especially if you're working on multiple different projects or have a history of projects in your account. Because if you have memory enabled, that means that it's drawing memory from all of these different things and can actually get confused. Adding memory for a specific project, adding instructions for specific projects, and adding files to give it context is the best 5 minutes of your time that you can invest in making sure that your chat functions the way you want. And then once you get into the chat, even the simple prompts, like for example, I just asked it, right, as an example, help me outline a short intro for this podcast I'm guesting on, right? It can give you context, even if it's disconnected from the core memory that Claude has. If it has enough context in the actual project, it's going to do that. But what I also do is I allow it to cross-reference conversations and allow it to draw memory from other chats that I had in the past. And it improves the results drastically. What typically comes next is that based on the Miro board conversation with Claude, we're going to identify, let's say, a couple of things that we want to prioritize on. And then we're going to decide, okay, so what is it that the team can do in-house? What do I need to do manually? And very often there are some time suck tasks that are taking away a lot of the team's time. So instead of the team being strategic, they actually get stuck in tactics a lot. And one of the best ways I figured out how to use Lovable is create, so two facets. One is the things that used to be just very passive and fixed, you can now make them creative. For example, this is a direct product of workshops that I do with the customers at the beginning of our interaction, where they go through, we work on a very messy Miro board, but this actually allows them to test their own conclusions and test their own views of the customers and create their own questions for the customer interviews, etc. So this is essentially something that used to be just a Miro board, or it used to be just a PDF before that. It's now an interactive experience that doesn't require me to be there to work through some things with the clients. So this is quite useful to do. So you can think about this. What is it that is repetitive in your work? What do you find yourself doing every once in a while that actually potentially does not require you? You're just there as a facilitator. And can that be created as an interactive experience that you can then share with the customers that they can explore on their own, either as follow-up to the call, preparation for a different call, or just as something that they can try out for themselves? But what happens with the marketers more is that we actually have that are incredibly boring, that are very tactical, and that are just focusing on execution. And a lot of times, building a mini tool in Lovable can save you hours and hours of repetitive work. And it's an incredibly simple, incredibly quick thing that you can just put out there. You can brand it for the customer. Just you need to make sure you're staying on the compliance side. But you can create a plethora of mini tools that then help your team or the customers do some things that are time consuming but are not very relevant. Like you can skip some parts very fast. So in this case, this is an actual thing that I built for a that allows them to turn blogs into YouTube scripts. So when I built it for them, it's actually pre-prompted with information that's important for their company specifically. But in this case, I'm just using kind of here. The process is ridiculously simple. Again, we're going to just hope that it copies properly, but you can just copy paste, generate script, and I have actually prompted it into deciding or creating this decision tree. There are base prompts that are tied to each of these types. So for example, this is going to be a thought leadership article, right? The tone is going to be warmer, etc. And then I'm just going to click generate and let it do its thing. Let's give it a moment. So it produces this entire script. Everything that you see here, I have prompted into existence. I didn't build anything, but I did edit everything. Every single thing was additionally touched. And now what you get here is a really solid script because it has a bunch of context from the blog post. It has a bunch of base prompts. You can copy and paste it into your document. The export functions don't necessarily behave the best when you're using Lovable. But there's a big caveat here. In this example, I'm skipping the entire process of drafting a script because you actually already have the basis. I got the draft now. At a snap of the fingers. But what now needs to be done by a human is that entire thing of judgment. Go in, see how did it do, what needs changing, where do you need to edit the text, how do you make sure that the information is accurate for your business, etc. So you can create those mini tools for your customer, for your team, for your own workflows. Just make sure to always leave the last bit of judgments, last bit of edits, the polishing, etc. to a human. I'll pause.
That is amazing. That's why you are the practical marketer. I think like thank
Very.
you so much for like tying the pretty bow at the end on like the full end-to-end use case where you're using like because I think that is one of the biggest challenges as marketers is unstructured data, i.e. the conversation into more structured format, Miro board, into something that is actually something that we want to repackage and reuse as marketers. That's a practical application, and that is let's write a blog post, and from that blog post, let's repurpose because there are a bunch of great ideas and
Exactly.
nuggets in there into a YouTube script, and you've already created the work up front of like how to extract those ideas and then format them into a narrative that's the YouTube script. That was so helpful and insightful, clear. Thank you for sharing that.
Do that.
Tamara,
Thank you.
yeah.
My pleasure.
So Practical Marketer might be the best place to find you
Yes,
online?
I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. So if anybody wants to find me, they can easily do. Hopefully, you can share the link
Of
to
course,
my
yes, of
LinkedIn.
course.
But yeah, Practical Marketer, practical-marketer.com is my website. You can read a little bit more about what I do. If you are interested in taking a look at any of the mini tools that I have, I'm actually building out a library of examples because this has been a consistent question. So that's why I love you doing this series, because this has been one of the most consistent questions is how do you actually use it? Because I think that what we are not really talking about enough is that a lot of marketers do feel a little bit disenchanted with what AI can do. And I'm very sad to see that because it can be incredibly useful tool if you use it ethically, morally, within constraints, with realistic expectations of what it's going to come back to give you. And there are so many small practical ways that you can plug it into your daily workflow without even flinching. And we need to start doing that and making our lives much easier.
Preach. I hear you. That is amazing. So also there's a kind of a DIY marketing playbook, lots of great resources on the site,
Yes.
Practical-Marketer. Tamara, thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. Thank
Thank
you.
you.